So you have a cool season lawn and you want to start all over, but you don't want to spend the money on having new sod installed. You've come to the right video. What's going on, everyone? Vince the Lawn Engineer here. In this video, I'm going to take you through all the steps and the materials and the tools that you're going to need to do a complete lawn renovation. So stay tuned. All right, so first off, I do want to mention that this is not a sponsored video. All of the products that I'm going to be talking about, I have purchased myself. I also want to mention that there is more than one way to do a lawn renovation. I've seen people comment saying, hey, just use manure and seed, and that's worked for them. What I'm going to be sharing with you in this video, I've done several times, and it has worked for me every single time without fail. So I'm highly confident that if you take these tips into consideration and you do things the way that I'm going to be presenting them to you in this video and the actual videos coming up in a few weeks when we do the actual work, you will be successful. And to be upfront with you, there is a lot to unpack in this video. I'll try to be as organized and specific and to the point as possible to make the shortest video possible to get you the information you need. I do have videos that I've done in the past that go in more depth and detail on some of these topics that I'm going to be talking about. So as I come up to those topics, I will be sure to mention, hey, take a look in the description down below if you need more education on that topic. All right, so let me just go over my situation with you real quick, go over a little bit of background. We've been here for about a year now. It is August 22. We moved in August of 21. Started out with a very crappy lawn. I've done some videos on that. I will leave those linked in the description down below if you want to find out more about the work that we've done. But for the past couple months now in the summer heat, I really haven't done too much. I haven't fertilized. I did not put down any pre-emergence or anything like that. And we've been taken over again by weeds because of it. So I'm going to be doing a full renovation. It's something that I've always wanted to do, didn't have the time to. I've mentioned it in my other videos. I've been planning to do this and anticipating to do this, and I'm super excited that we're about to be coming into the fall months soon, before you know it, and sharing with you this full renovation. Now, one of the first things that I need to take care of in order to achieve more of a smooth, level lawn is to take care of this area right here. This is an area that if you've been following along, you know that this was the area I had some trees and some English ivy growing in this area. Had that all removed. However, the company I hired did not do a good job of grinding these stumps down, and there are also a bunch of roots all over the place. You gotta get that out if you want to have that smooth, level lawn. So actually next week, Friday here, I will be renting a stump grinder. I will be grinding that down even further so that we can then come down with some soil and level that out. So I guess the first step here is preparing your site and making sure that you have a level lawn to work with. Take care of things like this if you need to, whatever it is that you need to take care of. Make sure that your site is prepared and ready to start this kind of a renovation. Along the same lines of preparing your site, we did just have a concrete porch installed. We did have a mulch bed there that came out. As you can see, the area in front of the porch is completely destroyed. I'm probably going to come in here and get a nice edge for a planting bed. That's certainly going to take away from the grass area, and we're going to plant some plantings here. So again, preparing the site. I'm not going to seed a certain area there because it's going to be a planting bed. So I need to map that out before I start all this work and make sure I have all that stuff squared away before doing all the rest of this work. So we actually want to hear from you. I want your opinion on what we should be planting here in this area. We have the fresh white concrete that was just poured. We're going to have this nice dark green grass probably a planter bed here with some black mulch. What do you think would complement that area? Let me know in the comments down below what you recommend. And while you're at it, please consider smashing that like button. It really helps us out here. Would really appreciate that. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We talk about everything related to lawn care, all DIY stuff to help you guys achieve a great looking lawn. It's also important to know the area of the lawn that you want to renovate. That's going to be critical to ordering the appropriate amount of materials. I'm actually an Echo User Advisory Group member. I did a video for them recently on how to measure a lawn. It's more from a business perspective. However, it has everything that you need to measure your lawn, a few tools, tips, shortcuts, things that you can use. Everything is there in that video. I'll leave that linked in the description down below as well. So make sure you go check that out if you need some more tips on measuring your lawn. All right, so this for the most part is everything you're gonna need for a complete lawn renovation. I will fill in some holes where I'm missing some things at the moment, but starting over here, we have basically our glyphosate. This is called Roundup Quick Pro. It contains glyphosate and dibromide. The dibromide will help quickly kill and the glyphosate will, make sure it's all killed down to the root. So, this is, you don't necessarily have to go with this. Like I've been saying, I mean, there's more than one way to do things. If you go to your local big box store, they will have other weed and grass killers that you can use. Lots of options there. This is one that I decided to go with, mostly because this is a granular that you mix with water in a backpack sprayer like this. And I just want to have, granular that I can, or I should say, water dispersible powder that I can keep on the shelf a little bit longer and not have to worry about liquid spilling. That's my preference, but again, there are more options, different options you can use. I am going with this mixed with water in a backpack sprayer. Going to spray over everything, and then once everything is killed, we are going to scalp the lawn and dethatch it. So I've got here my Earthwise dethatching machine. Great tool, will really pick up all the thatch that is built up. What we're trying to accomplish with a dethatcher like this is good seed to soil contact. That's going to be absolutely critical. You want the grass seeds to be in contact with the soil. We're going to be adding soil too, but if you were not adding soil, if your situation was you pretty much have a level lawn and you don't want to bring in soil, you need great seed to soil contact to get a higher percentage of germination and be more successful with your renovation, and a tool like this will definitely help you achieve that. So an alternative to a dethatching machine is what I have here in my hands. This is a dethatching rake. This is called the Groundskeeper 2 thatch rake. About $35, $40, I believe nowadays. I bought this several years ago, and it's been a great tool. Great for smaller lawns. So if you've got only, like, say 2,000 square feet, or maybe you could go up to 4,000 square feet, I would say. But if you're doing that much, this will definitely give you a nice workout. But for about 150 bucks, at least that's how much the electric dethatcher was when I got it. Not sure how much they go for nowadays, but for about that much money on Amazon, you can get an electric one that's just going to make quicker work of it, more efficient work, and really, I think does a better job of getting all the thatch out. And the next thing we're going to need to do is bring in some topsoil to help level everything out. This is going to help fill in some of the low spots, some of the holes and divots that we have in the lawn. And I'm going to be using a tool like this right here. This is the Landsea Lawn Level Tool. It's really great at spreading things out and smoothing things out and helping the soil find level ground. After we do that, we are going to then roll the lawn with a roller that's filled with water. That's going to help flatten things out and lightly compact the soil that we just put down, but it's going to help us really just smooth things out and help us prepare for the next step. All right, moving on. This is more or less an optional step. You do not need to do this, but I've been using these products for quite some time now, and they help. These are what we call in the industry like biostimulants. Many different companies out there. I have a few companies right here. Simple Lawn Solutions, Next, AgriGrow are just a few of the companies that sell products like this. These are going to be the products that contain things like seaweed or humic acid, fulvic acid in different concentrations, different blends. Actually, Super Cal here has some calcium, which is great for soil and foliar treatment. These are things that you can use on somewhat of a regular basis, like every 30 to 45 days if you're going to be using something like this. Not required for this step, but I do start introducing these products into the soil at this stage. Definitely optional, but just thought I'd consider and mention it here if this is something you're interested in. Next up is Tenacity. This is going to act as our pre-emergent. It is safe for seeding. We will talk about that a little bit later when we get onto our starter fertilizer, but this is way more concentrated than the starter fertilizer we're going to be using and is going to help prevent weeds from germinating but allow the grass seed to germinate. This is only to be used on cool season lawns. There are restrictions on other warm season grass types if you're going to be using it for that, but typically we only use this for cool season lawns. Make sure you read the label of this or any product that you plan on using before applying it to your lawn or using it in a renovation like this. The nice thing about Tenacity is it acts as a post-emergent and pre-emergent, but allows grass seed to germinate. So really, I only think this is a good product to use in this situation. A lot of people use it for post-emergent control, but are dissatisfied with how slow it works and how it bleaches almost everything. So really, I think this is a great tool, great product to use for establishing a new lawn when doing a full renovation like this. This will give about 5 to 6 weeks of pre-emergent control, allowing you to establish your lawn and get it to a point where then you can start using other pre-emergents that will give you a longer residual and last a little bit longer. So this is a great one. Make sure you're using a product like this if you want to prevent those weeds from coming up during germination. All right, and then this brings us to our seed. This is a 50-pound bag of perennial ryegrass. It is a blend of 5 different cultivars. I did pick this one up from United Seeds Inc. This is called 5 Iron. The label is here. This is what you would call a blue tag seed. It's got a blue certified seed tag here that gives you the purity, the germination percentages, the varieties, and the origins of this seed. Typically, we strive to obtain seed that has 0.00% crops and 0.00% weeds. However, if you're buying seed right now, there is a seed shortage. It's a very real thing. Depending on the cultivar, the type of seed you're going with, perennial ryegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, tall fescue, whatever it is, the yields are down 50 to 80%. What does that mean? That means higher cost, and you're likely going to get seed that has either other crop seeds or some weed seeds in it. I did a video on this particular bag that I bought here actually a few weeks ago. Make sure you go check that out. I'll leave it linked in the description below. I go into more detail about my conversation with United Seeds and everything about that blue tag there. If you want to learn more, make sure you go check that out. And to throw the seed down, you need a spreader. I have a few spreaders here, but one of the things I want to recommend is using a drop spreader like this one right here is great for doing a perimeter pass around the perimeter of the yard. So basically, around the perimeter right here, or if you've got, garden beds that you want to prevent the weeds from going into the garden beds, because a drop spreader will basically drop the seed right between the wheels. It does not broadcast the seeds like a broadcast spreader would. So I like to go around like 2 or 3 times on a perimeter pass with something like a drop spreader, and then come back to fill in the middle with something like a rotary spreader like these here. So this is on the smaller side. You got this Scott's Edge Guard Mini, And then on the larger side, you've got something like the Echo RB100. This is the RB100S, the stainless steel model. This, if you've got more than like 15,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet, this is the kind of spreader you want to use. But if you've only got, say, 4,000 square feet or something like that, this is all you need right here. You don't need to go with this like $600 spreader. You could just make way with this like $30, $40 spreader right here, no problem. Once we have the seed down, it's always a good idea to go ahead and lightly rake it in. I do like using a rake that has the metal tines, those fine tines that like fan out. That is such a great tool to just lightly rake it in. Again, we're striving for great seed to soil contact. We don't want to bury the seed, but we just want to lightly work it down into that like first eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, let's say, of soil. So the next thing I like to do is roll everything in, roll the seed in with a roller, similar to what we used when we put the soil down, like I mentioned earlier. The roller is going to help press that seed into the soil, making it a little bit harder for a rainstorm to wash things away. It'll hold a little bit better. I've had great success with doing that. It's worked every time for me. Next up is starter fertilizer. So you can put the starter fertilizer down at the same time as seeding. That is what I'm going to do. Some folks prefer to wait a couple weeks once things have germinated and started to take off. Basically, the argument there is if you put it down too early, you're wasting a little bit of the fertilizer, which, you know, may be true in some cases. My thinking is that I just don't want to step on that newly seeded area. I like to stay off of it as much as possible. I only want to step on it if I need to repair a washout or seed some weak spots. So I do it at the time of seeding, and if I need to, 6-8 weeks down the road, I will fertilize again. But the starter fertilizer is going to contain a higher amount of phosphorus. That phosphorus helps drive root development. So you need that for sure. The other thing this particular bag has is basically tenacity. It's mesotrione. We talked about that before. I do want to mention that if you're going to be spraying tenacity and putting a product like this down that has basically tenacity in it, you are double dipping on your application of tenacity. I did do a video on this in the past. I will leave a link down in the description below to that video where I go in more depth about that and some of the calculations I had to do to make sure I wasn't going against any of the label recommendations. So make sure you go check that out. And then the very last thing that we do is cover everything up with the peat moss. The peat moss is going to help mimic that seed to soil contact. It's going to help protect the seed, cover the seed, prevent birds from, eating your seed. It's also going to help prevent some of that erosion and washout from rain events, like I had mentioned earlier. And I use a compost and peat moss spreader to help spread this out. I have done it by hand. You can do it by hand. It's definitely more work. It's way more messy to do it by hand. However, I do like using the Landsea compost and peat moss spreader. It's a great tool. I've used it several times, so I will be using it for this, spreading this out. It makes short work of it. Peat moss is also excellent at holding water. It holds about 10 times its weight in water. It also is a great indicator of when you need to water the lawn, when you need to water that newly seeded area, because there is a stark contrast between dry peat moss and wet peat moss. You'll see like a lighter color, drier soil, and then when it's dry, and then when it's wet, you'll see a real dark color. So there's a real stark difference between that. So it's a great visual indicator of when you need to water. There's also a lot of extra bigger material, chunks of material inside the peat moss here that it sort of more or less filters out, sifts out. So the compost and peat moss spreader is going to be a great tool to utilize for that job. But if you don't have that, don't worry. You can certainly load that up in like a dump cart or a wheelbarrow and, you know, spread it out by hand with a shovel. It just creates a little bit of extra work, and you'll definitely be breathing in the peat moss, and you know, you'll have it all over your clothes for sure. So the timing of a renovation is really important. A lot of us talk about doing renovations in the fall. That's because you're coming out of those hot summer months and into the cooler fall months. And that's when soil temperatures are going to be at the best temperature for germinating grass seed. So that's why we do it in the fall. When you do it in the spring, not saying you can't do it in the spring, but when you do it in the spring, extra care has to be taken to get the established turf grass through that hot summer. Another thing to consider in regards to timing is the type of seed you want to put down. If you're going to start off early in the season like we are, late August, you could pretty much go with any of the cool season types. However, if you're going to be pushing that later on to like end of September, early October, which I honestly think is too late to be doing anything like this, you're probably going to be forcing yourself to use something like a perennial ryegrass, which will come up in about 4 days. Because if you were to go with something like a Kentucky bluegrass, that can take up to a month before you see germination. So if you wanted Kentucky bluegrass and you were starting in late September, you're probably not going to see any germination till the end of October, and then you're coming into the winter months and that first frost in November, and you're likely going to be unsuccessful with your renovation. So just something to consider. Make sure you understand that when you are timing this out for your lawn renovation, understanding what seed you're selecting, what seed you're going with, and planting that during the right time. So it's important to monitor the weather as you approach your lawn renovation. And that's because you don't want to do a renovation like this and spend all the time and effort if there's going to be, say, for instance, a huge storm event coming your way, a lot of rainfall, those gully washer rain events, because there's always the risk of losing on all of that hard work you did and having a washout where all of your seed and your hard work just gets washed away. That is the worst. And although you can't really predict the future, if you just follow the weather, look at the 2-week look ahead and make sure that you have extra material and extra seed, extra peat moss, let's say, and make sure you have enough to go back and repair any washouts if they happen. And regarding the temperatures, what we're looking at are falling temperatures, falling down into more of those like fall-like temperatures, not quite, you know, the 50s or 40s, but, you know, as we start coming out of those summer 90 and 80 degree temperatures and falling down into, you know, the 70s, let's say, what we're really looking at is the soil temperature. And what you're looking for is a soil temperature in like the 70s, maybe the high 60s. But as you start seeing a falling temperature in the soil, that's going to be indicative of prime soil temperatures, a prime time to get your seed down and start your renovation. Once you've put everything down, it's important, absolutely critical. This will not work if you don't do this. You have to water. Water, water, water. Water is going to be key. Part of the reason why we use the peat moss, like I said before, is that it is a great holder of water. It holds water very well. It also has a stark contrast in color between dry and wet, so it's a great indicator of when you need the water. And the goal is to keep everything moist, not soaked, moist. If you see ponding, that's too much water. You just want to keep the seed moist, keep the peat moss moist, keep everything moist, and you will be successful with this. Try not to let things dry out. If they do dry out, that's, you know, not the end of the world, but you don't want to make a habit of it. You want to make sure you're staying on top of your watering. I do have a DIY irrigation system that I'll be setting up here shortly for the purposes of staying on top of watering. I'll leave a link in the description down below to a video I did on that system if you are interested in learning more about that. But really, it's absolutely critical. Make sure you water. Do not forget about that. As far as cost goes, for a renovation of this size that we're looking at, about 2,500 square feet, I'm spending about $500 to $600 on materials for that area. That includes the extra seed, extra peat moss that I have, and it also includes the soil that I plan on bringing in, although I haven't calculated exactly how much soil I need yet. That's why I'm ranging it between $500 to $600, but I'm anticipating to bring in about, 2 yards of topsoil for this renovation. That's running about $80 a yard. So, that's why I have that range in there, maybe between $500 and $600, maybe a tad more. But just want to give you a rough idea based on this area, 2,500 square feet. That's kind of the cost you're looking at if you're to do it yourself. That is just really for the materials. That does not include, the tools, spreaders, all that stuff. That's all extra. And, you don't necessarily need to have exactly all those tools that I had mentioned before. You can spread peat moss by hand if you need to, and you're just going to use more peat moss probably. But the tools that I mentioned just make quicker, easier work of it, more efficient work of it. But like I said at the very beginning of the video, there's more than one way to do this. This is the way that I like to do it, and can almost guarantee that if you do it the same exact way, you will have very successful and very great looking results. So for our renovation, I plan to start the work probably at the end of the month here in August. Make sure you are subscribed and following along, because I do plan on filming every step of the process. And there you have it. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for joining.